You know what governments love to tell you? That they're working day and night for your financial freedom. They love buzzwords, stability, growth, opportunity. It sounds great. But if you actually stop and look closely at history, you'll see something much darker. Here's the truth. Governments have always used hidden financial tricks to keep ordinary people broke. Why? To consolidate wealth and power for themselves. And the truly shocking part, these tricks aren't new. They've been recycled for centuries, wrapped in different packaging, sold under new names, but the purpose is always the same, to transfer wealth upward and keep the majority dependent. Let's start with the oldest and simplest trick in the book: inflation. When a government spends more money than it can raise through taxes, it has two options. Option 1. Admit the truth and tax its citizens openly. That's politically dangerous. Option 2. Quietly debase the currency. Reduce the value of every single coin and note in circulation. Ancient Rome mastered this. In the 3rd century, emperors were facing massive military expenses, so they began reducing the silver content of the denarius. A coin that was once nearly pure silver eventually became mostly copper with just a thin wash of silver on top. The empire pretended nothing had changed, but everyone holding those coins paid the price. Inflation skyrocketed. Savings evaporated. Wages couldn't keep up. It was a silent tax on the population. A trick still used today, just with central banks instead of imperial mints. The Middle Ages brought another version of this game: forced loans. Monarchs in England, France, and Spain routinely leaned on wealthy merchants to lend money to the crown. Of course, these weren't voluntary. Refusal meant fines, confiscation, or worse. Sometimes the crown promised repayment with interest, but repayment often came late, in devalued currency, or never at all. The government maintained its wars and palaces, while merchants had to surrender their capital. The trick here was coercion disguised as patriotism or duty. And it worked for centuries. By the 17th century, the financial system itself became the trick. When Britain created the Bank of England in 1694, it wasn't out of charity. It was because the government desperately needed money to fight wars with France. Wealthy investors bought government bonds, and in return, the crown guaranteed interest payments funded by taxes. This sounds like a fair deal, right? But think about it. Who paid those taxes? Ordinary people through duties on goods like salt, beer, and cloth. The wealthy lent money to the government and earned secure interest. The poor paid higher taxes to fund those interest payments. It was a wealth transfer system dressed up as national finance, and it cemented a pattern still alive today. The safest investments in the world are lending money to governments, and those returns are ultimately guaranteed by the labor of the masses. Fast forward to the modern world. The tricks are everywhere. Take deficit spending. Governments run up massive debts, issuing bonds bought by investors and banks. Politicians tell the public it's for infrastructure, jobs, or social programs. But much of it funnels into defense contractors, corporate subsidies, and bailouts. When repayment time comes, do governments cut spending at the top? No. They raise taxes, inflate the currency, or slash social benefits. The trick is that the debt looks like it's for the people, but the burden lands on their shoulders, while the profits go to the bondholders. And then there are bailouts. Remember the 2008 financial meltdown. Banks took reckless bets and nearly collapsed the global economy. Who paid for it? Ordinary taxpayers through massive government bailouts. Who profited afterward? The very same banks which emerged bigger than before. The trick was simple: privatize the gains, socialize the losses, and the public was told this was necessary to save the system. Even the way governments handle pensions is a sleight of hand. For decades, people have paid into government-managed systems, trusting the money would be there when they retired. But governments don't actually save that money. They spend it immediately and leave IOUs in its place. The promise is that future taxpayers will cover the cost. It is essentially a generational Ponzi scheme, wrapped in official language. It works, until demographics shift and the system becomes unsustainable. Then the government reforms it, usually by reducing benefits or raising the retirement age. Notice the pattern. At every stage, the trick relies on perception. The public is told inflation is growth, national debt is investment, and bailouts are stability. The language masks the reality, a transfer of wealth from the many to the few. In recent decades, the tricks have only become more sophisticated. Consider quantitative easing. Most people never even heard of it before 2008. Central banks created trillions of dollars out of thin air to stabilize markets. Politicians reassured the public this was necessary, and it worked for the financial system. Asset prices soared: stocks, real estate, bonds. But who owns most of those assets? The wealthy. For the average household, the downside came in the form of rising living costs. Another modern sleight of hand is stealth taxation. Instead of raising income taxes directly, governments quietly tax through mechanisms like sales taxes, fuel duties, and most of all, inflation. When prices rise faster than wages, the gap is effectively a hidden tax on your purchasing power. Governments love inflation because it reduces the real value of their debts. This is not a bug of the system. It is the system. Then there is regulatory capture. On the surface, regulations are meant to protect the public, but time and again, powerful industries influence the regulators meant to oversee them. Railroads, oil companies, tech, finance, all have shaped rules in their favor. The public sees protection, the insiders see profit. War finance is another old trick in new clothes. During world wars, governments told citizens it was their patriotic duty to buy bonds. People thought they were supporting their nation. But these bonds also became lucrative, risk-free investments for the wealthy, guaranteed by future taxes. The trick is that wars are always presented as temporary emergencies, yet the financial burdens last for generations. Governments also weaponize complexity itself. Tax codes thousands of pages long, financial instruments so complicated even professionals struggle to explain them. All of this creates an environment where ordinary citizens cannot possibly track how money is flowing. Complexity becomes camouflage. When you cannot see the transfer of wealth, you cannot resist it. Why does this matter now? Because the tricks are alive and accelerating. Inflation eats away at your savings. Debt loads grow. Bailouts remain the reflex of choice. The lesson from history is not just that these tricks exist, but that they always return. Different ages, same mechanism. And here is the harsh truth. Most people will never escape these tricks because they don't even realize they're being played. They believe government messaging instead of studying economic history. And that ignorance is the most powerful trick of all. So what should you take away? First, always look beyond the headline. When inflation rises, remember it is policy, not bad luck. Second, build real wealth outside the traps, assets that hold value when currency does not. Third, never assume the system works for you just because it says it does. Systems exist to protect themselves, not you. History doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. If you don't understand it, it will crush you. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers, and I'll show you where to look.